I'm Drew Holland, 32 years old. 2 months ago, on Christmas Eve, my mother left my 5-year-old daughter and me at a homeless shelter. Little Lily clung tightly to her teddy bear and gazed up at me with wide eyes. "Mommy, did we do something bad?" My mother never even looked at her. She simply lowered the window of her Mercedes-Benz, fixed her stare on me, and said coldly, "This is where failures belong." Then she drove off through the falling snow, her taillights fading into the night as though she had never existed. What she didn't realize was that the shelter director stood just behind her car. He recognized her license plate instantly. Before I go on, if this story resonates with you, please like and subscribe, only if you truly want to hear what happened next. Where are you tuning in from, and what time is it there? Leave a comment and tell me. I'd love to know. Now, let's step back 3 weeks earlier, to the day everything shifted. December 3rd began as an ordinary Monday. Lily was at kindergarten while I sat at my desk at Morrison & Associates, balancing quarterly reports for a client specializing in upscale bathroom fixtures. Glamorous, right? At 2:47 p.m., my inbox chimed. Subject: Organizational restructuring, effective immediately. I reread it 3 times before the meaning hit. Due to year-end budget constraints, my position was eliminated. Final paycheck processed. Best wishes in your future endeavors. 8 years. 8 years of late nights, overtime, catching tiny decimal mistakes that saved clients thousands. And they couldn't even deliver the news face to face? I drove home in a daze, pulling into the lot of our modest 2-bedroom apartment complex, one that had definitely seen finer days. The hallway carried the familiar, faint whiff of someone's overdone cabbage, but it was our home. Lily had taped her handmade paper snowflakes to the window, each one crooked in that proud 5-year-old way. Our little 3-foot artificial Christmas tree, a Goodwill treasure, stood in the corner adorned with the popcorn garland she'd strung at school. I sank onto the kitchen chair and did what I always do in crisis: math. Rent, $1,450 due January 1st. Savings, $2,300. Unemployment benefits, pending, likely weeks away. I was figuring out how long rice and beans could stretch us when my phone buzzed again, this time the landlord. "Ms. Holland, as previously discussed, the building has been sold. All tenants must vacate within 30 days. Please confirm receipt." I stared at the message, then at Lily's snowflakes, then back again. 30 days. We had 30 days. A quiet thought rose uninvited. There's always Grandpa's house, but that idea carried baggage I wasn't prepared to unpack. I waited until Lily was asleep before dialing. Some talks aren't meant for little ears. My mother picked up on the 4th ring. Drew. Not hello, not a question, just my name, flat and hard. "Hi, Mom. I need to talk to you about something." I laid it out calmly. The job loss, the apartment deadline, the timing. My voice stayed even, almost businesslike, as though I were reporting earnings instead of pleading for help. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she spoke. "I'll think about it." I closed my eyes. Her house, the one she'd bought after Dad left, renovated 3 times with divorce settlement money, had 4 bedrooms. 4. She shared it with my sister, Brooke, Brooke's husband, Tyler, and more square footage than most people need for a wedding. "Just the spare room," I said, "until I land something new. A few weeks, maybe a month." "I'll think about it." Her voice edged sharper, then turned almost casual. "Have you considered selling Grandpa's house?" My fingers tightened around the phone. Grandpa's house, the modest craftsman cottage he'd left me 2 years ago, the only inheritance I'd ever received, the only evidence anyone in my family had ever thought I mattered. "I can't sell it, Mom. You know that. The will prohibits transferring ownership for 5 years without my written consent as sole heir. The lawyer made it clear. Grandpa was sentimental." Her tone turned icy enough to frost windows. "You're being foolish. That house sits empty. It's not about... Come to the house tomorrow. We need to discuss options." She hung up before I could answer. Options. The word twisted in my stomach like a knife. Her house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Willowbrook Estates. Manicured lawns, HOA notices about proper mailbox shades, the works. I eased my 12-year-old Honda into the circular driveway, painfully conscious of the oil spot it might leave on the imported pavers. Lily gripped my hand as we approached the door. "Mommy, why does Grandma's house smell like a store?" "Just fancy candles, sweetheart." Brooke opened the door, my 28-year-old sister, blonde highlights gleaming, cashmere sweater likely worth more than my entire grocery budget for the month. She looked at me the way you'd regard a smudge on fresh linen. "Drew." She bent toward Lily with a smile that stayed surface level. "Oh, look how big you've gotten. Come in, come in." The foyer alone dwarfed my whole living room. A towering 10-foot Christmas tree commanded the space, expertly draped in silver and white ornaments straight out of a Pottery Barn spread. The air carried notes of Joe Malone, pine, and eucalyptus. I remembered fleeing their store once after seeing the price tags. "Drew, darling." My mother glided down the curved staircase in a silk wrap dress, champagne flute delicately balanced in her hand. At 61, Patricia Holland could have passed for a woman who'd signed a lifetime contract with the finest dermatologist money could buy. "Sit, let's talk." I lowered myself onto their $15,000 restoration hardware sectional and immediately felt like an ink spot on cream upholstery they were itching to bleach out. My mother had never wasted time on pleasantries. She sank into the armchair opposite me with the regal poise of someone reclaiming her throne and cut straight to the point. "You may stay here, temporarily." She let the word drift between us like a suspended blade. "Provided you agree to transfer Grandpa's house into a family trust." I blinked. "What family trust?" Tyler finally lifted his eyes from the laptop screen. "It's straightforward, a legal entity that lets the family manage the asset collectively, far more efficient." Brooke leaned in, her voice dripping with practiced honey. "Tyler's company needs collateral for a bridge loan. The house is vacant, Drew. You're not even living there." Lily shifted closer to me, sensing the thickening air she couldn't name. I rested a steadying hand on her small knee. "It's okay, sweetheart." Then I met my mother's gaze. "Grandpa left that house to me, specifically. He wanted it to be mine." "Your grandfather always had a sentimental streak where you were concerned." Patricia's lip lifted in the faintest sneer. "He had a weakness for underdogs." The word landed like an open palm. Underdogs. As though caring for me had been his one regrettable flaw. "The will includes a protective clause," I said, keeping my tone even. "No transfer of ownership for 5 years without my explicit written consent. The estate attorney spelled it out. Grandpa put that in place precisely to stop family from helping family." Brooke cut in. "That's just paranoid." I really looked at her then, past the flawless makeup and the highlights, and saw the flicker of real panic beneath. Tyler's startup must be bleeding worse than anyone let on. "I'm not signing anything," I said. My mother set her champagne flute down with a deliberate click. "Then I can't help you. You'll have to sort it out on your own." As I helped Lily into her coat, I caught Tyler's low murmur to Brooke behind us. "Give her a week. She'll come crawling back." I tightened my grip on Lily's hand and walked out without looking behind me. The next 14 days dissolved into a gray smear of rejection emails and shrinking bank balances. 43 applications for accounting roles, 2 callbacks, both ended with the polite corporate dismissal, "We'll keep your resume on file." December is the worst possible month to hunt for work. Offices run on skeleton staff, everyone racing to close the fiscal year. "Check back in January," they all said, as though January rent would magically cover itself. Savings slipped from $2,300 to $1,800 after groceries, to $1,400 after the electric bill, to $1,100 after a failed apartment application denied for lack of current employment proof. I reached out to old college friends, former colleagues who'd once promised we'd always stay connected. Every reply carried the same careful excuses. Renovations underway, mother-in-law in town, lease restrictions on guests. By December 20th, I had $400 left and no legal address after the 31st. The quiet voice in my head kept returning to one possibility: Grandpa's house. But it sat 40 minutes outside the city in a rural pocket with zero public transit. I'd need reliable wheels just to get Lily to kindergarten or myself to interviews. The roof leaked in 3 places, the furnace coughed more than it heated, and the closest grocery store demanded a 20-minute drive. It wasn't a homecoming, it was a slow-motion emergency dressed up as a refuge. Christmas Eve brought freezing rain and one last shred of desperation. I swallowed the last of my pride and dialed my mother. "Please," I said, "just until I find something. Lily doesn't understand why we have to leave our home." 3 heartbeats of silence. "Fine," she answered. "I'll pick you up at 6. Relief flickered, then died. I should have known better. The Mercedes arrived at 6 sharp. Punctuality was one of Patricia's few dependable virtues. Lily bounced beside me in her puffy coat, teddy bear crushed against her chest. "Is Grandma taking us to her house? Will there be hot chocolate?" "We'll see, baby." I slid our single suitcase, one that held everything we truly needed, into the trunk. The cabin smelled of fresh leather and Chanel No. 5. A vanity plate caught the streetlight. Fallen. We drove in near silence through neighborhoods glittering with holiday lights. Lily pressed her forehead to the glass, counting blow-up Santas. I tracked the route and felt a cold weight settle in my gut. This wasn't the road to Willowbrook Estates. "Mom, where are we going?" No answer. The car turned onto Harbor Street, past darkened storefronts, a barred liquor store, a pawn shop with flickering neon. She coasted to a stop in front of a 3-story brick building. A hand-painted sign hung above the entrance. New Hope House, Emergency Shelter. "Mom, what is this?" She touched a button. The window glided down. Icy air poured in. "This is where failures belong." She spoke without turning, without glancing at Lily, without a trace of doubt. "Perhaps a few nights here will teach you to make better choices." "Grandma," Lily's voice was tiny, "did we do something wrong?" My mother didn't respond. She only gestured toward the curb. I have no clear memory of opening the door or lifting the suitcase from the trunk. I only remember standing on the wet sidewalk in the freezing rain, Lily's hand locked in mine, watching those taillights vanish around the corner. Then a calm, deep voice spoke from behind me. "That license plate. I know that car." I turned. A man stood in the shelter doorway, framed by warm light spilling onto the steps. Late 50s, silver flecks in close-cropped hair, a face carved by years of witnessing other people's hard seasons. "I'm sorry," he said, eyes moving gently from me to Lily. "That was painful to watch. Please, come inside." He extended a hand. "Marcus Whitfield, I'm the director here." The moment we crossed the threshold, warmth wrapped around us like arms we hadn't realized we needed. The place wasn't luxurious: worn linoleum, soft buzz of fluorescent tubes, the faint scent of institutional cleaner mixed with simmering vegetable soup. But it was dry, it was heated, and right then, that felt like everything. Marcus led us down a narrow hallway to a modest office that felt more lived in than official. Files stacked in uneven towers, children's crayon drawings taped haphazardly across the walls, like a patchwork gallery of hope. He settled us into 2 mismatched chairs and asked his questions with quiet care. Our names, how long we might need to stay, any pressing medical concerns. I answered mechanically, my mind still half frozen on that rain-slick sidewalk. This is where failures belong. "Drew," Marcus's voice gently tugged me back. "I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll forgive the directness. The woman who dropped you off, Patricia Holland, what exactly is your relationship to her?" I swallowed against the knot in my throat. "She's my mother." A subtle change crossed his face. He leaned back, fingers forming a loose staple. "Mrs. Holland sits on the board of the Hope Harbor Foundation," he said carefully. "It's the nonprofit that helps underwrite this shelter." Another measured pause. "I'm the founding donor." I stared at him, the words refusing to settle. "That Mercedes you saw drive away?" He nodded toward the window and the empty street beyond. "I remember when it was purchased. $85,000 charged to the foundation's outreach transportation budget. It was approved as a van, something practical to shuttle people to doctor's appointments, job interviews, shelters. Instead," his jaw flexed, "it became her personal luxury sedan." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "I've been waiting for solid proof," Marcus continued, voice low. "I believe you just handed it to me." Our assigned room was small and spare, 2 narrow twin beds with thin metal frames, a chipped nightstand, a single window overlooking a narrow alley. Someone had made an effort. A tiny artificial Christmas tree no taller than Lily stood in the corner, strung with handmade paper stars that caught the weak overhead light. "Mommy," Lily perched on the edge of her bed, teddy bear pressed tight against her ribs. "Is this our new home?" I knelt in front of her, smoothing damp strands of hair from her forehead. "It's temporary, sweetheart, just until Mommy sorts a few things out." She studied me with that solemn 5-year-old gravity, then rummaged in her princess backpack, the one she'd refused to leave behind, and pulled out a folded sheet of construction paper. "I made this at school, for you." I opened it slowly. Wobbly crayon houses beneath a lopsided yellow sun. 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, holding hands in front of a little yellow house. My throat sealed shut. "It's beautiful, baby." The teacher said, "Draw what you want Santa to bring." Lily tapped the yellow house with one small finger. "I want a house where nobody can make us leave." I pulled her close so she wouldn't see the tears spill. I'd spent 2 weeks stitching myself together with grit and arithmetic. Now, on a sagging shelter mattress on Christmas Eve, the thread finally snapped. I cried without sound, face buried in her soft hair, while Lily patted my back the same gentle way she comforted her bear when she thought it was sad. When her breathing evened into sleep, I sat watching the rise and fall of her chest, and in the deepest part of me, the place where unbreakable promises are made, I swore, "I will never let anyone make you feel worthless." My phone lit up, a text from Brooke. "You brought this on yourself. Don't contact us again." I flipped the screen down and stared at the paper stars until dawn crept in. Christmas morning in a shelter is strangely hushed. Volunteers arrived with donated gifts for the kids. Lily received a fresh coloring book and a plush white rabbit she promptly christened Snowflake. She didn't ask about Grandma's big tree or hot chocolate. She didn't ask for anything. That silence hurt worse than questions ever could. Around noon, while she colored quietly beside me in the common room, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. Brooke's latest post loaded first, a flawless, professionally lit family portrait in front of the towering 10-foot tree. Patricia in cream cashmere and pearls, Brooke in rich red velvet, Tyler's arms slung possessively around her waist, all 3 smiling like they'd stepped out of a holiday luxury ad. Caption, "Grateful for family. Merry Christmas from the Hollands." I zoomed in before I could stop myself. 6 stockings dangled above the marble fireplace, Patricia, Brooke, Tyler, Baby 2026, and 2 unfamiliar names, probably the dogs. No Drew, no Lily. The comments rolled in like syrup. Beautiful family, living the dream, #family goals. Then the verified Hope Harbor Foundation account, "Happy holidays to our dedicated board member Patricia Holland. Your generosity continues to inspire us all." A laugh tore out of me, harsh, ugly. Lily glanced up from her purple rabbit. "Mummy, what's funny?" "Nothing, sweetheart, just a silly picture." But nothing was funny. My mother had deposited her daughter and granddaughter at a homeless shelter on Christmas Eve, then posed for saintly photographs the very next morning, and the world was clapping. I closed the app and watched Lily give her snowflake a castle turret made of violet crayon. "A magical place," she explained, "where nobody was ever allowed to be mean." I wished I could move us both inside that drawing. Marcus found me the next morning in the shelter's small courtyard. I sat on a cold metal bench, watching my breath cloud and vanish. He handed me a paper cup of real coffee, not the thin, institutional brew, and settled beside me. "I did some digging after you gave me your name last night." I wrapped numb fingers around the warmth and stayed quiet. "Patricia Holland joined the Hope Harbor board 3 years ago. Standard entry fee for high net worth donors who want influence, $50,000. Since then, there have been discrepancies." He exhaled through his nose. "The car is the most blatant, but it's not the only one. Expense reports that don't reconcile, a sizable consulting fee routed to a shell company that appears to have no real operations." He reached inside his coat and withdrew a single folded sheet. "An email from our board secretary, Sandra Davis, sent to me 6 months ago. I didn't move on it then. I lacked hard corroboration." He passed it over. I unfolded the page and read it twice, pulse rising with each line. "Mr. Whitfield, I'm concerned about the vehicle purchase approved last quarter. The invoice clearly specifies a Ford Transit van designated for outreach services. However, the registration I processed yesterday is for a Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan, titled and insured to Mrs. Patricia Holland personally, not the foundation." I looked up at Marcus. The paper trembled faintly in my hand. He met my eyes steadily. "Now we have a witness. And we have you."
"Why didn't you do something?" Marcus exhaled slowly, the sound heavy in the quiet office. "I tried. At the next board meeting, I requested a full independent audit. 3 other members, all close personal friends of your mother, shut it down immediately. They called me paranoid, insisted Patricia Holland was a pillar of the community, beyond reproach." His voice hardened, edges sharpening like steel. "But our bylaws are clear. As founding donor, I have the authority to demand an independent audit if I can present credible evidence of financial misconduct." He met my eyes directly, unflinching. "You witnessed her drop you and Lily here, in the freezing rain on Christmas Eve. You can testify to her character firsthand. And we have Sandra's email as documentation." "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "I'm asking if you want to help me stop her." Before I could form an answer, my phone rang. Unknown caller, local area code. I stepped away from Marcus, pulse thudding in my ears. "Miss Holland, this is Jennifer Rao from the law offices of Baxter and Associates. I'm calling regarding the Holland Family Trust." My stomach dropped. "I don't know anything about a Holland Family Trust." "I see. You'll receive certified mail shortly, but I wanted to extend the courtesy of a heads up." Her tone stayed crisp, clinical, stripped of any warmth. "The trust is requesting that you transfer the property at 742 Maple Lane, your grandfather's former residence, to facilitate family estate consolidation. If you comply within 14 days, the trust offers a one-time compensation of $10,000. $10,000 for a house appraised at $380,000. And if I don't sign? A deliberate pause. "The trust will explore other legal avenues. Property disputes can become protracted, costly, and deeply stressful, particularly for parties with limited resources." The threat lingered, thick as smoke. "I'm not signing anything." "That's your prerogative, of course, but Miss Holland," her voice dipped into something almost pitying, "consider your circumstances. You're unemployed. You're residing in an emergency shelter with a young child. A prolonged legal battle would be challenging. The offer is generous under the circumstances." I ended the call without another word. When I turned, Marcus was watching me steadily. "They're circling. My mother, my sister. They want Grandpa's house so Tyler can use it as collateral for a loan. They offered me $10,000 for a property worth nearly $400,000. They think I'm desperate enough to fold." Marcus stayed quiet for a beat. Then, "Are you?" I thought of Lily's crayon drawing, the little yellow house under a smiling sun, 2 stick figures holding hands, a place where nobody could make us leave. "No," I said. "I'm angry enough to fight." 2 days later, my sister called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some stubborn remnant of childhood, shared bedrooms, borrowed sweaters, late-night secrets, made me answer. "Drew?" Brooke's voice came softer than I expected, tired, almost broken. "Can we talk? Like, actually talk?" "I'm listening." Mom's approach was wrong, I know that. Dropping you at the shelter, that was too far. She let out a shaky breath. "But you have to understand, Tyler's company, things are bad, really bad. He owes $500,000. Investors pulled out, the bank denied the loan." Her voice cracked. "If he doesn't fix this, we lose everything. The house, the cars, our whole life. So you want me to lose everything instead?" "It's not like that." She was crying now, or close enough. "The house is just sitting empty, Drew. You're not even using it. We need collateral. One signature, Tyler secures the loan. You'd get it back eventually." "Would I?" Silence stretched thin and taut. "Brooke," I kept my voice level even as my hands trembled. "You and Mom want me to gamble my daughter's only inheritance, the one thing I have left to give her, to bail out your husband's failing business? A business he wrecked with his own choices? That's not fair. None of this is fair." I heard her inhale sharply. When she spoke again, the softness had vanished. "Mom said if you don't sign, she'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you are, living in a homeless shelter with your child. CPS might find that interesting." The line went dead. I stared at the darkened screen. For the first time since this spiral began, fear gave way to something sharper, cleaner, clarity. Brooke's threat wasn't empty. 2 days later, I learned precisely what other legal avenues looked like. Marcus called me into his office, expression grave. "You received something today. I wanted you to see it with me here." He slid a printed email across the desk, forwarded from the shelter's admin account. A concerned citizen had filed a report with Child Protective Services alleging that Drew Holland was subjecting her minor child to unsafe, unstable conditions by residing in a homeless shelter. The message was anonymous, but the signature line read, "Submitted via Hope Harbor Foundation Community Concern Portal." My mother was weaponizing her own charity against me. "They can't actually take Lily, can they?" My voice came out smaller than I meant. "No," Marcus replied, firm and grounding. "You're in a licensed emergency facility. You're actively seeking employment. Lily is fed, clothed, enrolled in school. CPS may investigate, but they'll find nothing actionable." He paused. "I've already spoken with a social worker I trust. She's agreed to fast-track the home visit so this doesn't drag on." 3 days later, Teresa arrived, clipboard in hand, eyes kind but professional. She chatted with Lily about kindergarten, surveyed our small room, our few belongings, our faces. She checked boxes on her form. "You're doing fine," she told me quietly before leaving. "Better than fine, considering." Then she glanced toward the shelter's front door. "Whoever filed this report, they weren't motivated by concern for your daughter. The complaint traced to an IP address tied to a nonprofit downtown, Hope Harbor Foundation." The walls seemed to close in. My mother wasn't just after the house, she was trying to take my child. And in that moment, Marcus's question from days earlier rang clear again in my head. "Do you want to help me stop her?" Yes. Yes, I did. Let me pause here. If you're thinking, this can't be real, this is insane, I get it. I lived it, and some days I still can't believe it myself. I lived it, and even now, months later, some nights I wake up wondering if I dreamed the whole thing. But this is where the tide finally turned. Before I go any further, I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Signed the papers to keep the peace, take the $10,000 and try to start over quietly, or fought back with everything I had left? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button now. The story's about to get a lot more interesting. The morning after Teresa's CPS visit cleared the air, I sat across from Marcus in his cramped office, legal pad open between us, the first real plan taking shape. "I'm done running," I told him. "What do we need?" He leaned forward, fingers steepled. Article 7 of the Foundation's bylaws gives the founding donor, the position I still hold, the explicit right to demand an independent forensic audit whenever there's documented evidence of financial impropriety. I've had suspicions for years, but Patricia's inner circle on the board always voted me down, called me paranoid, said she was untouchable. His voice took on an edge. Now I have Sandra's email about the Mercedes purchase, and I have you. Me? A first-hand witness to her character, someone who can testify, under oath if it comes to that the woman who collects Philanthropist of the Year plaques abandoned her own daughter and 5-year-old granddaughter at a homeless shelter on Christmas Eve, in the freezing rain, without a backward glance. He let that sit for a second. But the email alone can be waved off as a clerical misunderstanding. We need the vehicle registration showing the car is titled in her name personally, not the Foundation's. That's public record. DMV can pull it. Time frame? 5 to 7 business days for a formal request. I glanced at the wall calendar. The annual gala is in 4 days. They're presenting her with the award then. Exactly. Not enough time the conventional way. Marcus's gaze sharpened. There's another path. Sandra Davis, the board secretary who sent me that original email, still has full access to internal records, including the purchase requisition, invoice, and approval chain for the Mercedes. Would she help? She's been waiting for someone to give her cover. Patricia treats her like hired help. I've watched it at meetings for years. The real question is whether she's willing to risk her job. I pictured Lily asleep in our narrow room, the tiny tree glowing with her paper stars. I heard my mother's voice again, cold and final. This is where failures belong. Call her, I said. Let's find out. Marcus called. Sandra agreed to meet us at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the Foundation's headquarters. Neutral ground, quick escape. She looked younger than her position suggested. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled into a severe knot, hands that couldn't stop fidgeting with the silverware. She barely sipped her latte. I can't be seen with you long, she whispered. Patricia has eyes everywhere. If she finds out... We understand, Marcus said gently. We only need to know if you can pull the original purchase documentation for the Mercedes. She nodded once, sharp and nervous. I have it. I kept personal copies of everything after she forced me to file those expense reports. I knew something was wrong. Her eyes flicked to me. You're her daughter? Yes. She mentions you at board meetings. She says it in a less than flattering way. The words stung, but I pushed past them. Can you get us those documents before the gala? That's the problem. Her knuckles whitened around the cup. Patricia knows someone's asking questions. She called an emergency board session yesterday. They're reorganizing the financial archives, which means shredding anything that could hurt her. Marcus's jaw clenched. She's covering tracks. There's more. Sandra pulled out her phone, angled the screen so only we could see. Yesterday, she filed paperwork to retitle the Mercedes to the Foundation, backdated to October. My stomach lurched. Can she do that? The DMV will process it eventually if no one challenges the application. But, she looked at Marcus, the email I sent you 6 months ago, the one documenting the original purchase, has an unalterable timestamp from my personal account. I forwarded it before she could scrub the Foundation servers. Marcus exhaled slowly. So we have the smoking gun email, timestamped and metadata intact. She can backdate paperwork all she wants. She can't rewrite what's already sitting in my inbox. Exactly. Sandra stood up abruptly, latte abandoned. I have to go. I'm sorry, I can't do more. I have a family. You've done enough, I said. Thank you. She vanished before the words finished landing. The next morning, my phone rang, Sandra again. Her voice trembled so badly I barely recognized her. I can't help anymore, she said. I'm so sorry. What happened? Patricia knows. She knows I've been talking. Her breathing came in shallow bursts. She called me into her office yesterday, said she'd noticed irregularities in my performance, said if I want to keep my job, I need to remember where my loyalties lie. I closed my eyes. Sandra, I have 2 kids, Drew. I'm a single mom. I can't lose this position. She was crying openly now. She wins. She always wins. People like her, they have lawyers, connections, money. We don't stand a chance. I understand, I said, and I truly did. I couldn't ask her to gamble her children's roof for mine. Thank you for trying. A long, shivering pause, then quieter. The email I sent Marcus is still in his inbox. Original timestamp, original metadata. And Drew? Her voice steadied just enough. I forwarded him the vehicle registration too, the real one, before she started backdating. It's all there. The line went silent. I found Marcus in the shelter kitchen, sleeves rolled up, helping a volunteer stack donated canned goods. One look at my face and he knew. Sandra's out, I said. She threatened her job. He nodded, setting down a can of beans with deliberate calm. I thought that might happen. But she confirmed everything she sent is still in your inbox. The email, the original registration, timestamped before Patricia could alter anything. Marcus's eyes narrowed with something close to fire. Then we still have the evidence and we don't need her testimony. He smiled, small, fierce, dangerous in the best way. The documents can speak for themselves. And Drew, he pulled out his phone. I've been making calls. 2 other board members just agreed if we present this evidence publicly, they'll back a motion for an immediate audit. I raised an eyebrow. Publicly where? At the gala. The invitation arrived at the shelter the next afternoon. Heavy cream cardstock, embossed gold lettering, my full name written in calligraphy so perfect it had to be professional. The Hope Harbor Foundation cordially invites Miss Drew Holland to our annual winter gala.
Inside the heavy cream envelope was a single sheet of my mother's personal stationery, thick cream vellum, monogrammed PH in elegant gold foil, of course. Handwritten in her precise, slanted script, Drew, I'm offering you one final chance to be part of this family again. Come to the gala. Sign the papers. This can all end peacefully, with dignity. Bring Lily. Let her see what a real future could look like. Mother. I handed the note to Marcus without a word. His eyebrows lifted as he read it. She's turning the gala into her stage, he said quietly. She wants to corner you in front of witnesses, make it look like a tearful, heartwarming reconciliation. The prodigal daughter returns. Perfect photo op. Perfect press release for the foundation newsletter. The bitterness rose in my throat before I could stop it. Mother forgives wayward child, welcomes her back into the fold, all captured for the holiday appeal campaign. She has no idea we're coming prepared. No. I traced the calligraphy of my own name on the invitation. It looked like it belonged there, until you remembered I'd been uninvited from every family gathering for years. She thinks I'm broken, desperate, ready to crawl back for whatever crumbs she'll throw. Marcus reached into his jacket and produced an identical invitation. Founding donors receive one automatically. I've attended every gala since we launched the foundation. He met my eyes. She'll expect to see me. She won't expect to see me arrive with you. I pictured her on that stage, spotlight warm, applause rolling, award gleaming in her hands. Then the moment the room turned, her face when the truth landed. She wants a performance, I said slowly. Let's give her one. Marcus nodded once. 2 days. We need to be airtight. The next 48 hours blurred into focused preparation, the kind of meticulous work I used to do for clients who paid 6 figures. We built the case like it was the final quarter-end close, no room for error. Marcus quietly confirmed support from the 2 board members willing to move. Richard Okonkwo, a retired judge who'd grown quietly uneasy about Patricia's unchecked influence, and Eleanor Whittemore, the soft-spoken widow whose family had funded the foundation for 3 generations. Both had swallowed their doubts for years. Neither had felt safe speaking up alone.
If you present irrefutable evidence publicly, Richard said over speakerphone, voice steady as granite, Eleanor and I will second the motion for an immediate forensic audit, but it has to be bulletproof. Patricia has too many allies on that board for anything less. I spent hours at the shelter's single shared computer compiling our file. Sandra's original email documenting the Mercedes purchase under Patricia's personal name, timestamp intact. The vehicle registration she'd forwarded, pre-backdating, clear proof of personal titling, highlighted excerpts from Article 7 of the bylaws, founding donors' inequivocal right to demand an audit upon documented evidence of impropriety, a clean timeline, car purchase, Sandra's whistleblower email, Patricia's backdating attempt, her pressure campaign against me, including the CPS report filed through the Foundation's own portal. The night before the gala, Lily watched me smooth the wrinkles from my only dress, a simple navy sheath I'd crammed into our suitcase months earlier. Still clean, still serviceable. "Mommy, are we going to see Grandma?" I knelt beside her cot, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Yes, baby, we're going to a fancy party." "Will Grandma be nice this time?" The question cracked something deep inside my chest. My 5-year-old had already learned to brace for unkindness from the woman who should have spoiled her with cookies and stories. That wasn't right. That wasn't normal. "I don't know," I admitted, "but listen to me, okay? Whatever happens, Grandma's behavior is never, ever your fault. It was never your fault, and Mommy is going to make sure no one treats us like that again." Lily studied me with those grave, searching eyes. Then she reached over, plucked her teddy bear from the pillow, and pressed it into my hands. "For good luck," she whispered. I clutched it like a shield. Sleep refused to come. Lily had long since drifted off, one arm curled around Snowflake, the magical rabbit, her breathing soft and even. The paper star tree cast faint twinkling shadows across the wall. I lay staring at the cracked ceiling, doubt creeping in like cold air under the door. Was I doing the right thing? My mother was cold, manipulative, cruel, but she was still my mother, the same woman who steadied the handlebars when I wobbled down the driveway on my first two-wheeler, who sewed my Halloween costumes by hand, who wiped my tears at my high school graduation when Dad didn't show. Before the divorce hardened her, before money and status became her armor, was I really about to dismantle her in front of everyone she knew? Then the memory surfaced, sharp and uninvited. This is where failures belong. The flat, emotionless certainty in her voice. Not rage, not sorrow, just fact. As though I weren't her daughter, but a mess to be discarded. And Lily's small, trembling question in the freezing rain. "Grandma, did we do something wrong?" No, we didn't. The doubt was seated, replaced with something quieter, more solid. I wasn't doing this for revenge. I wasn't doing this to wound her. I was doing it because Lily deserved to grow up knowing that cruelty, even from family, has consequences. That you don't bow your head and accept mistreatment because blood ties you to the hand that delivers it. That standing up isn't selfish. It's the bare minimum required to survive with dignity. My mother had spent decades teaching me I was never enough. The disappointing daughter, the black sheep, the failure. And I'd spent just as long trying to prove her wrong. I was finished auditioning for her approval. I didn't need it anymore. I just needed to tell the truth and let the documents do the rest. I closed my eyes. Sleep finally came. The morning of the gala, my phone buzzed with a string of texts from Brooke. "I know you're coming tonight. Don't make a scene. Just sign the papers, take the money, and disappear. It's better for everyone, including Lily." I read them over instant oatmeal and brown sugar in the shelter dining hall, Lily's favorite breakfast. I didn't reply. Another message landed. Mom is getting Philanthropist of the Year tonight. Don't ruin this for her. She's worked so hard for it. I nearly laughed aloud. My mother had worked hard by purchasing a board seat and quietly diverting funds meant for people sleeping on the street. In Brooke's universe, that qualified as noble effort. Then the final message arrived. I stared at it longer than the rest. Tyler filed for divorce yesterday. He says if we can't get the loan, there's no point staying married. He's taking everything he can get. I'm losing my home, my marriage, everything. If you sign over the house, I might be able to save something. Please, we're sisters. For a long moment, the pang was real. I remembered Brooke at 7, tagging after me, wanting to wear my clothes, copy my homework, be exactly like me. That little girl was still somewhere under the highlights and the cashmere. She was terrified. She was losing the life she'd built her entire identity around. But then I heard her voice on the phone again, the softness vanishing like mist. Mom said if you don't sign, she'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you are, living in a homeless shelter with your child. CPS might find that interesting. Sympathy flickered, then died. I set the phone face down on the table and watched Lily carefully spoon the last of her oatmeal into her mouth, careful not to spill a drop. She looked up and smiled, small, trusting, perfect. I wasn't going to the gala to destroy my mother. I was going to make sure my daughter never had to wonder if she was the reason someone hurt her. And tonight, the truth would do the talking.
Maybe CPS would be interested in that. She threatened to take my daughter. You chose your side, I texted back, and it wasn't mine. I blocked her number, powered off the phone, and set it face down beside my empty oatmeal bowl. Lily looked up, spoon paused midair. Mommy, why do you look mad? I forced a smile and brushed my thumb across her soft cheek. I'm not mad, sweetheart. I'm ready. The Riverside Country Club shimmered under strings of white lights as our taxi eased into the circular drive, like a snow globe lit from within. Valets in crisp red vests swarmed luxury sedans. Guests stepped out in sequins and black tie, laughing softly against the December chill. Through the tall arched windows, I could see chandeliers scattering diamonds across polished marble floors. Lily pressed her nose to the glass. It looks like a castle, Mommy. It does, doesn't it? I'd done what I could with what we had. My navy sheath was wrinkled at the hem, but freshly steamed in the shelter's laundry room. Lily wore the pink dress we'd found in the thrift corner, slightly too big, sleeves rolled once, but she'd twirled in front of the cracked mirror for 10 full minutes, beaming. My only jewelry was Grandma's pearl studs, the ones I'd refused to pawn even when the balance dipped below $200. Simple, sentimental, ours. We didn't belong here. That was clear the second we climbed out of a yellow cab instead of a chauffeured SUV. Heads turned, whispers followed. But then Marcus appeared at the top of the wide stone steps, tall, steady, impeccable in charcoal wool, and offered his hand. You look ready, he said quietly. I don't know if I'll ever be ready for this. A small, knowing smile. That's the secret. No one ever is. The ballroom stole my breath despite everything. White linen draped every table, roses spilled from crystal vases, a string quartet played something delicate and Viennese in the alcove. Above the stage hung an enormous banner, Hope Harbor Foundation Annual Gala, celebrating our champions. In dead center, larger than life, was my mother's portrait, serene, radiant, untouchable. I spotted her across the room instantly. Red sequined gown catching every light, hair sculpted into perfect waves, laughing with a tight circle of admirers like royalty receiving petitioners. Our eyes met at the same moment. Her smile flickered, just a millisecond, then flared brighter, practiced and perfect. She began gliding toward us through the crowd. The game had started. She intercepted us near the silent auction tables, spa weekends in Napa, signed first editions, private yacht charters. Drew, you came. She air-kissed my cheek without touching skin, then looked down at Lily with an expression I couldn't parse. "And you brought her. How sweet," I said evenly. "You invited us." "I did." She squeezed my upper arm, hard enough to leave faint crescents from her nails, then released me and drifted away to greet another donor. The ceremony began an hour later. Lights dimmed, guests settled. A polished video montage rolled, smiling families moving into transitional housing, volunteers handing out coats, testimonials from people the foundation had lifted up. Each clip ended with the Hope Harbor logo and a soft piano sting. The executive director stepped to the podium. "And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, our Philanthropist of the Year award goes to someone who embodies everything Hope Harbor stands for: her generosity, her dedication, her tireless advocacy for the less fortunate." My mother's face glowed under the spotlight, humble, grateful, flawless. "Please welcome to the stage Patricia Holland." Thunderous applause. She rose like a prima ballerina taking her final bow, red sequins flashing as she crossed the stage. She accepted the heavy crystal trophy with rehearsed grace, kissed both cheeks of the presenter, then stepped to the microphone. "Thank you," she began, voice trembling with carefully measured emotion. "Family is everything to me. I'm so blessed to have both my daughters here tonight." She looked straight at me. "I believe in second chances. I believe even those who've lost their way can find their path back. That's what Hope Harbor is all about." More applause. Several heads turned toward me with sympathetic, knowing smiles. The prodigal daughter, welcome home at last. I kept my expression blank. Across two tables, Marcus caught my eye and gave the smallest nod. Not yet. Dessert was served. Chocolate souffle, gold-dusted truffles. My mother made her move. She approached our table with Brooke and Tyler in tow, a coordinated front of designer tailoring and strained smiles. Brooke's eyes were puffy. She'd been crying. Tyler's jaw was locked so tight I could see the muscle twitch. "Drew, darling," my mother's voice carried just far enough to draw neighboring tables into the conversation. "Could we speak privately? Just family." "Say what you need to say," I answered. Her smile tightened. She reached into her clutch and produced a slim folder. "I have the transfer papers right here. Sign them tonight and this ends. I'll write you a check for $20,000, enough to get back on your feet, start fresh somewhere new." $20,000 for a house appraised at $380,000. "It's generous," she continued, glancing meaningfully around the room. "Considering your circumstances, you're unemployed, living in a shelter. Surely you want better for your daughter." Heads were turning now, conversations hushed. I felt the weight of every gaze. "Mom's right," Brooke said with a voice cracking. "Just sign it, Drew. End this. We're family." Tyler leaned in, voice low but not low enough. "Think about Lily. What kind of mother drags her kid through this? A stable home or a homeless shelter? Seems like an easy choice." Murmurs rippled outward, judgment on some faces, pity on others. My mother had staged it perfectly, the concerned matriarch trying one last time to save her troubled daughter. Lily tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, why is everyone looking at us?" I squeezed her hand under the table. Not yet. Then, from across the room, Marcus stood up. He walked toward us with measured steps, shoes clicking against the parquet like a metronome counting down. The string quartet had already fallen silent. Conversations died mid-word. "Excuse me." His voice carried without effort, the calm authority of someone who'd chaired too many boardrooms to be ignored. "Marcus, this is hardly the time for foundation business." "On the contrary, Patricia." He stopped beside me, facing her directly. "I think this is precisely the time." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a slim folder of his own. "As founding donor of the Hope Harbor Foundation, Article 7 of our bylaws grants me the unequivocal right to demand an independent forensic audit whenever there's documented evidence of financial irregularities." He paused, letting the silence swallow the room. "I am exercising that right tonight." Murmurs exploded into open whispers. Guests exchanged stunned glances. At the head table, Richard Okonkwo and Eleanor Whittemore leaned forward, alert and ready. "This is absurd," my mother said, voice rising just enough to crack the polished veneer. "Whatever personal grievances you have with my daughter—" "This isn't personal," Marcus cut in, calm as stone. "It's fiduciary." He opened the folder and held up the first page, Sandra's original email, time-stamped in black and white. 6 months ago, our board secretary flagged a discrepancy, a vehicle purchased with foundation outreach funds, an $85,000 Ford Transit van intended for transporting vulnerable clients to medical care, was instead registered as a Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan, titled "Personally to You, Patricia." Gasps rippled through the nearest tables. My mother's face drained of color beneath the perfect makeup. That was a clerical error. Marcus didn't let her finish. He lifted the next document, the original registration, time-stamped, metadata intact, before any attempt to retroactively correct it. He turned slowly, addressing the entire room. "I also have a sworn statement delivered to me this week from a direct witness, a witness who can testify that on Christmas Eve, Patricia Holland drove her own daughter and 5-year-old daughter-in-law to the steps of New Hope House Emergency Shelter, lowered the window of that very Mercedes-Benz and said verbatim, 'This is where failures belong,' then drove away, leaving them in freezing rain." The room went deadly still. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time in my memory, she had no rehearsed line ready. Marcus met her eyes without blinking. "Philanthropist of the Year," he said quietly. He let the irony hang. Then he turned to Richard Okonkwo and Eleanor Whittemore. "I move for an immediate, independent forensic audit of all Hope Harbor Foundation financials for the past 3 fiscal years, with particular attention to expenditures approved under Patricia Holland board tenure." Richard stood first, seconded. Eleanor rose beside him, seconded. The applause that followed wasn't for my mother. It was for the truth finally breaking the surface. My mother stood frozen, crystal trophy still clutched in her hands like it might shield her. I looked down at Lily, who was watching the room with wide, confused eyes. I lifted her onto my lap and held her close. Whatever came next, investigations, headlines, fallout, she would remember this, that when someone treats you cruelly, even if they're family, the world can still choose justice. And sometimes the people who smile brightest under spotlights cast the longest shadows. If you want to know what happened in the days and Marcus unfolded the paper with deliberate calm, holding it high enough for the nearest tables to see the crisp print. "I'm referring to multiple irregularities," he said, voice carrying effortlessly across the hushed ballroom. "The most immediate, $85,000 of foundation outreach funds, earmarked for a practical vehicle to transport vulnerable clients to medical appointments and job interviews, was used to purchase a Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan, a luxury personal vehicle." He lifted a second document, the original registration certificate, its official seal and date unmistakable. "Here is the registration dated 8 months ago. It lists the owner as Patricia Holland, personally, not the Hope Harbor Foundation, not an outreach program. Patricia Holland." The room went so quiet I could hear the faint clink of a champagne flute being set down somewhere behind me. My mother's face lost its color beneath the flawless foundation, but her voice stayed measured, practiced. "There's been a misunderstanding," she said. "That vehicle is used for foundation outreach work. I've driven it to site visits, donor meetings." "The registration says otherwise, Mrs. Holland." Marcus's tone was almost gentle, the way you speak to someone already falling. "And internal emails from foundation staff confirmed the invoice was deliberately misfiled to obscure the true nature of the purchase." Across the room, Eleanor Whittemore rose slowly to her feet, hands clasped in front of her like she was steadying herself against a sudden wind. "I second the motion for an independent forensic audit," she announced, voice clear and cutting through the stunned silence like glass breaking. Every head swiveled toward me then. I stood, My navy dress felt suddenly too plain, my borrowed shoes too scuffed, Lily's small hand warm and trusting in mine. I had never looked less like I belonged among the sequins and crystal, and I had never felt more certain. I have the email correspondence confirming this purchase, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. I reached into my small purse and withdrew the printed page Sandra had forwarded to Marcus, the one my mother could never delete. Sent by your own board secretary 6 months ago. I held it up and read aloud, letting each word land. Mr. Whitfield, I'm concerned about the vehicle purchase approved last quarter. Per the invoice, it should be a Ford Transit van for outreach services, but the registration I processed yesterday is for a Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan, and it's registered to Mrs. Holland personally, not the foundation. Gasps rippled outward like water disturbed by a stone. Someone nearby whispered, "Oh my God." My mother's composure fractured at last. "Drew," her voice shook, raw for the first time I could remember. "How could you do this to your own mother?" I folded the email carefully and tucked it back into my purse. "I'm not doing anything to you, Mom. I'm just reading what your own staff documented." Tyler had begun edging toward the side exit, but a voice stopped him cold. "Aren't you Tyler Mercer?" An older gentleman at the next table was staring, recognition dawning. "The one whose company filed for bankruptcy last month? I read it in the business journal." Tyler froze. Brooke made a small, strangled sound. Richard Okonkwo rose next, tall and unhurried. "As a member of this board," he said, "I second Mrs. Whittemore's motion. We require a full, independent forensic audit immediately." "Third," came another voice from the back of the room. My mother stood isolated now. Tyler and Brooke had retreated several steps, leaving her alone under the chandelier light, the Crystal Philanthropist of the Year trophy still clutched in her manicure hand like a shield that had suddenly turned to glass. The guests who had applauded her 10 minutes ago were now whispering behind programs and napkins, expressions shifting from polite admiration to open shock and disgust. The documents had spoken, but I wasn't finished. "There's one more thing the board and everyone here should know," I said. My voice didn't waver. "About why Mrs. Holland has become so invested in charitable giving lately." The room, already silent, seemed to hold its collective breath. "My grandfather, Patricia's father, passed away 2 years ago. He left me his house and his will, a modest craftsman cottage, nothing extravagant, appraised at around $380,000. He included a protective clause. The property cannot be transferred for 5 years without my explicit written consent as sole heir." I paused, letting the implications settle. For the past month, my mother has been pressuring me, first politely, then less so, to sign that house over, not for charity, not for the foundation, for her son-in-law's failing business, so he could use it as collateral for a loan. I glanced at Tyler, who was trying and failing to blend into the damask wallpaper. "She offered me $10,000. When I refused, she drove me and my 5-year-old daughter to the New Hope House emergency shelter on Christmas Eve, in freezing rain. She lowered the window of that very Mercedes-Benz and said right in front of my child, 'This is where failures belong.' Then she drove away." The gasps were louder now, sharper. Several people turned to stare at my mother with undisguised horror. Eleanor Whittemore pressed her hand to her chest. "Patricia, is this true?" My mother's mouth opened. Nothing came out. For perhaps the first time in her life, she had no prepared response, no polished deflection. Brooke started crying openly now. "Mom, say something." "I was trying to help her," Patricia managed, voice strangled. "She was making bad decisions. Someone had to show her." "Show her what?" Marcus interrupted quietly. "That her mother would abandon her rather than lose control of an asset." The silence that followed was devastating. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't screamed or pointed. I'd simply told the truth, and the truth had done the rest. In the middle of the murmuring guests and my mother's crumbling poise, no one noticed Lily let go of my hand. She walked forward in small, deliberate steps, pink thrift store dress swaying, Snowflake, the magical rabbit, tucked under one arm. The crowd parted around her without thinking, like water around a stone. My mother looked down at her granddaughter. For a single heartbeat, something almost human flickered across her face. Regret, maybe? Or recognition. "Grandma, why did you leave us at that place on Christmas? It was really cold, and Mommy was crying." The room stopped breathing. I watched my mother search for words, for the careful spin, for any way to make this moment palatable. There was none. Lily continued, oblivious to the adult storm around her. "Mrs. Davis at the shelter gave me hot chocolate, and she said Mommy was brave. She said, being brave means doing hard things even when you're scared." Lily tilted her head, looking up with those guileless, searching eyes. "Are you scared, Grandma? Is that why you were mean?" Eleanor Whittemore made a sound that was half gasp, half sob. Several guests wiped at their eyes. My mother, perfectly composed, always in control, had no answer. Her hand trembled around the Crystal Philanthropist of the Year trophy. Her mouth opened, closed. Marcus stepped forward gently. "I think we've heard enough for tonight." He was right. A 5-year-old's simple question did more than documents, emails, and accusations. It had stripped away every layer of performance and left only the truth. And the truth, spoken in a child's voice, was louder than any applause my mother had ever received.
It had stripped away every defense, leaving the truth naked under the chandelier light. What happened next unfolded with the swift, inevitable precision of a building whose supports had finally given way. Richard Okonkwo rose and called for an emergency board vote right there on the ballroom floor. Within 15 minutes, amid hushed conversations, urgent phone calls to absent members via speaker, and a palpable shift in the air, the board unanimously suspended Patricia Holland from her position, effective immediately, pending the outcome of a full, independent forensic audit. Eleanor Whittemore stood at her table, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles showed white. In a voice that trembled with quiet fury and sorrow, she announced, "My family will be withdrawing our annual $50,000 pledge until the foundation demonstrates that it has restored integrity to its leadership." One by one, other major donors followed. By the time the gala officially dissolved, guests slipping out in clusters, many without saying goodnight, nearly $200,000 in pledged contributions had been rescinded on the spot. The board's legal counsel approached my mother with the grim formality of a process server. "Mrs. Holland, you will be required to provide complete documentation for the vehicle purchase within 7 business days. Should the audit confirm misappropriation of foundation funds, you will be obligated to reimburse $85,000 plus associated costs. The board also retains discretion to refer the matter to the district attorney's office for criminal review." She stood frozen, the Crystal Philanthropist of the Year trophy still clutched in her manicured hand like a relic from a life that had just ended. Guests filed past without meeting her eyes, without the polite small talk that had once orbited her like planets around a sun. Tyler had already vanished. I later learned he'd summoned an Uber while I was still speaking and hadn't looked back once. Brooke sat alone at their table, mascara streaking her cheeks, abandoned by the circle that had once defined her. Before we left, I walked past my mother one last time. "True," she said, voice hoarse and cracked. "How could you?" I stopped, looked at her, really looked, maybe for the first time since I was a child waiting for approval that never came. "I didn't do this to you, Mom. You did this to yourself. I just told the truth." I took Lily's hand. "Goodbye, Patricia." The use of her first name landed like a physical blow. I saw it in the flinch, in the way her fingers tightened around that meaningless trophy until her knuckles blanched. We walked out into the cold December night, and I didn't look back. Marcus caught up with us in the parking lot, breath fogging in the sharp air. "Drew, wait!" I turned.
Lily was already half asleep against my shoulder, exhausted by an evening far beyond her understanding. "What you did in there took courage," he said quietly, "more than most people muster in a lifetime." I just told the truth. "That's exactly what I mean." He paused, reached into his jacket, and handed me a simple, elegant business card. Hope Harbor Foundation, Financial Services Division. The foundation needs a new accountant, someone with integrity, someone who can help us rebuild what was damaged. I know you're looking for work. I pulled your records from Morrison & Associates, 8 years of spotless performance reviews, catching errors that saved clients thousands. That's not nothing. I stared at the card, mind reeling. After tonight, you'd hire me? After I helped expose a board member? "I'd hire you because you helped expose a board member." His smile was small but genuine. "We need people who care more about doing the right thing than protecting the powerful. Send me your resume when you're ready." Lily stirred, mumbling something about Snowflake. I shifted her weight. "There's one more thing," Marcus added. "Your grandfather's house, you said it needs repairs. The roof leaks, the heating's unreliable. You can't live there with Lily until it's safe." I nodded, wary. "The foundation runs a transitional housing rehabilitation program, grants specifically for situations like this, helping people make inherited or long vacant properties livable again. You retain full ownership. We provide the funds and vetted contractors." He paused, eyes softening. "Your grandfather would have appreciated the irony. Edward Holland gave me my first small business loan 30 years ago when I had nothing but an idea and a lot of determination. I've been waiting to find a chance to repay that kindness." I stared at him. "You knew Grandpa?" He said, "I did, and I think he'd be proud of how you handled tonight." January arrived like a quiet promise kept. Grandpa's house stood at the end of a narrow road lined with bare oaks, their branches reaching toward the pale winter sky like hopeful hands. The roof no longer leaked, the furnace hummed steadily, fresh paint covered the walls in colors Lily had chosen herself. Sunny yellow for the kitchen, soft blue for her bedroom, gentle green for mine. I stood on the porch most mornings, coffee warming my hands, watching Lily chase squirrels across the frosted lawn. Her laughter rang out, full-bodied, unself-conscious, the kind children lose too soon if the world presses too hard. My first day at Hope Harbor had been the previous Monday. The audit confirmed everything. Misappropriation totaling $87,342. Patricia was ordered to repay it within 60 days or face criminal prosecution. Last I heard, she'd listed the Willow Brick Estates house. Brooke was couch surfing with old college friends. Tyler had disappeared to California. Divorce papers arrived by certified mail, filed remotely. I hadn't spoken to either of them since the gala. I'm not sure I ever would. The house was smaller than my mother's mansion, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that still carried the faint ghost of rosemary Grandpa used to grow on the windowsill. But every inch was ours. No one could threaten to take it. No one could make us leave. Lily ran back to the porch one afternoon, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Mommy, can we plant tomatoes in the spring like Great-Grandpa did?" I pulled her into a hug, breathing in the scent of pine needles and little girl shampoo. "We can plant whatever you want, baby." "And can Snowflake have her own garden? A magic rabbit garden?" "Absolutely." She grinned, bounded inside to retrieve her stuffed rabbit, already plotting their spring empire. I looked out at the bare trees, the quiet road, the sky beginning to lighten with the promise of longer days. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The text came on a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks after I'd started the new job. I was stirring spaghetti sauce, Grandpa's recipe, heavy on garlic and fresh basil, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number, but I recognized the area code instantly. Brooke had gotten a new phone. "Drew, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. Tyler left. He took everything, the accounts, the car, even most of the furniture. I had to move in with Amanda from college. I'm sleeping on her couch. I don't know what to do." I set the wooden spoon down and stared at the screen. The kitchen smelled of tomatoes and home. Lily was at the table, coloring a picture of a yellow house with a garden full of magical rabbits. I didn't reply right away. I wasn't sure I ever would. But I also wasn't sure I wouldn't. Some doors close forever. Others, maybe they just need time. I turned off the burner, plated the spaghetti, and sat down beside my daughter. "Mommy, look! Snowflake planted carrots for the Easter Bunny." I smiled, real, unforced. "They look delicious, sweetheart." And for the first time in a long time, the future felt like something I could walk toward instead of something I had to survive. Brooke's messages sat on my screen like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading, then fading. I read them again while the spaghetti sauce bubbled softly, filling Grandpa's kitchen with the smell of garlic and home. Mom won't talk to me. She blames me for introducing her to Tyler, for bringing him into the family. She says I ruined everything. The 3 dots danced, vanished, danced again. I'm sorry for what I said, for threatening to call CPS, for all of it. I was scared and desperate, and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. Can we meet? I know I have no right to ask, but you're the only family I have left. I set the phone down beside the cutting board and stared at Lily's latest refrigerator masterpiece, a crayon family under a yellow sun. Me, her, Snowflake the rabbit, and Grandpa's house with its new green roof. No Grandma, no Tyler, just the people who stayed. Part of me, the little sister who used to braid Brooke's hair while we watched cartoons, who believed blood meant forever, ached to type, "Yes, let's meet," to forgive fast, to stitch the tear closed before the scar could set. The rest of me remembered Christmas Eve, the cold rain on my face, Lily's small voice asking if we'd done something wrong, the taillights disappearing, the shelter erector's quiet kindness when my mother's had run out. I remembered the CPS report filed through her own charity, the $10,000 offer for a $380,000 house, the gala where she'd tried to stage a public reconciliation while hiding embezzlement behind a crystal trophy. I typed slowly, each word measured like ingredients in Grandpa's sauce recipe. I'm not ready, Brooke. Maybe someday, but not now. I need time to heal from what happened, and I can't do that while pretending everything is okay. I hope you find your footing. I really do. But I have to protect myself and Lily first. Take care of yourself. I hit send before the second guessing could start, then turned back to the stove. Forgiveness, I was finally understanding, wasn't a debt I owed anyone. It was a gift I could choose to give or withhold when I was ready, and I wasn't ready yet. Spring crept in the way it always does here, reluctant at first, then sudden and generous. Crocuses poked through the last patches of snow, daffodils opened like tiny yellow suns, and the oaks along the road greened almost overnight. On a warm Saturday in April, Lily and I knelt in the garden Grandpa had once tended so carefully. Our hands were black with soil, packets of tomato seeds lined up in neat rows, exactly the way he taught me when I was 8. "Mommy," Lily said, patting earth gently around a fragile seedling, "why doesn't Grandma come visit us?" I sat back on my heels, brushing dirt from my jeans. I'd known this question was coming, I just hadn't known how my voice would sound when it arrived. "Sometimes," I said carefully, "people we love make choices that hurt us, and when that happens, it's okay to love them from far away, to keep ourselves safe while we wait to see if they change." Lily's small face scrunched in thought, serious as a judge. "Is Grandma sad?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe. I think she is." She nodded with the absolute certainty only a child can carry. "People are mean when they're scared. Mrs. Davis said so." I smiled despite the ache in my chest. Mrs. Davis, the shelter volunteer who'd given Lily hot chocolate and a blanket on the hardest night of our lives, had clearly left a permanent mark. Mrs. Davis sounds very wise. She is. Lily went back to her seedlings, then glanced up again. Money, I'm glad we live here now, even if Grandma doesn't visit. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in fresh earth, strawberry shampoo, and the particular smell of little girl Hope. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, after Lily was asleep with Snowflake tucked under her chin, I sat on the porch with chamomile tea and watched fireflies blink Morse code across the garden. The air was soft, full of cricket song and the faint scent of blooming lilac from next door. My mother had called me a failure. She'd said it in front of my child, in freezing rain, like it was an indisputable fact. And yet, here I was, employed at a job that mattered, living in a house no one could threaten to take, raising a daughter who already understood that kindness costs nothing, and boundaries are sacred. If that was failure, I'd wear the label like a medal. The documents spoke at the gala, but the quieter truth, the one that settled deepest, was simpler. I never needed my mother's approval to know my worth. I'd only needed to believe it myself. Watching the fireflies drift through Grandpa's garden, I finally did. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you've ever had someone in your family make you feel like you weren't enough, I want you to hear this clearly. You're not alone, and your value was never theirs to measure or withhold. If this story touched something in you, leave a heart in the comments. Subscribe if you'd like more real stories about ordinary people finding their way through hard seasons. There are links to the full series in the description. And remember, boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges, built for the people who prove, over time, that they deserve to cross them. Take good care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.